All right. Welcome in. Happy Monday to the Iowa State Fan Perspective. As always, brought to you by the Play the Fight Song podcast, where we cover all things college football, that is, but you guys are tuning in for all things Iowa State football centric. If you are tuning in tonight, I appreciate you guys listening in, as, of course, on the night of arguably, people have been saying the biggest regular season game in basketball history. I think it's a big stretch, but I mean, when Big 12 regular season titles are on the line, I think it's a giant game. And of course, Iowa State can't just enjoy the game itself. Iowa State fans have to be dealt with massive breaking news, which is what brings us here tonight as offensive coordinator Nate Scheelhaase, reported by Adam Schefter. One thing I never thought I'd really be saying is Iowa State breaking news was reported by Adam Schefter that he has now left. He is hired for the pass game specialist for the LA Rams. So we will dive into kind of my initial thoughts, maybe who they should go after, and kind of where do they go from here. Not great timing. Definitely happy for Nate. I think everybody kind of saw this coming eventually. I don't know as far as maybe an NFL gig, but nonetheless, if you join in usually to our fan perspectives, I'm usually joined by my brother Justin. He is enjoying the basketball game tonight. I don't blame him, as he's going to be diving into happier news than this one. But let's go into it a little bit. Initial thoughts. Okay, let's start with the bad news first, I guess, because if you go on Twitter and all the socials, you would act like probably the sky is falling for this program right now. I don't believe that's the case 100%. But we'll talk about the bad stuff first. I think the timing of this is not great. Spring ball just kind of getting started here for the Cyclones. They actually just today announced that the spring game is going to be here on April 20th. So with spring ball getting into the full swing of things, a team that's bringing back, I believe now, 10 of the 11 starters from last year's offense. You're bringing back one of the smartest minds in college football. The sky is the limit. So that's kind of the bad side of things. I would say my initial thoughts personally is I'm surprised, but not surprised. Now, what does that even mean? I think if you were within the Iowa State program, or if you really paid attention to college football and just all things within this program, I don't think this comes to a surprise. Now, the timing is definitely surprising. It's February. He's just coming off his first season as an offensive coordinator at Iowa State, and to take an NFL job in his going to be second year, I think that's a little surprising to people. But it was reported by Chris Williams today that, he took 3 interviews, or he had 3 other offensive coordinator job offers this offseason. I would imagine that they came from either Big Ten or SEC schools, because I don't think a lower level school would be going after Iowa State's offensive coordinator. So I would have loved to known who gave him a ring and where they were looking at. But I think that's really interesting. Like I said, the timing of this sucks. And also, I don't think him taking a NFL job was as surprising. I mean, he's going to be a pass analyst. What was Iowa State's strength in 2023? It definitely wasn't the run game. He turned Rocco Beck, a redshirt freshman, into one of the more proficient passers in all of college football, and really sparked his young career. So that's what caught these coaches' eyes. He's going to be learning from what I think is one of the best young coaches in the NFL, and I don't think my opinion is short there. I think a lot of people can agree with me. The biggest thing is, I thought this could have been a big year for him had he stayed and coached this football team leading into a head coaching job in 2025. That's kind of my surprise on why he left. To leave after 1 year after getting the offensive coordinator upgrade was surprising. But looking back on it, what's the upside if he stays this year and doesn't take this job? He has a great year. Iowa State wins 8-9 games. The offense improves on all facets. And then he gets what? A Bowling Green head coaching gig, a MAC head coaching job, a Sunbelt head coaching job. I mean, we've seen it. And by the way, tune in tomorrow for our Play the Fight Song live episode every Tuesday, where we're going to talk everything that is in all head coaching hires. And we just saw it. Like, these coaches, they don't want to take these group of 5 jobs. I don't think that was his goal. He's a young guy who's going to be learning from one of the best in the NFL. And we'll get to some of the candidates, I think, in going into next year. And yeah, Brian Ferentz is definitely on the top of my list, Nate. But yeah, it wasn't surprising in that facet. Take the chance, take a chance on your head coaching career. He's 33. Go learn from one of the best in the NFL. And honestly, if you pay attention to like Coward and some of these NFL heads, there's a lot of rumors right now that's saying, you know, McVay's got 3 or 4 years left of his interest. He's really good on television. He's got a really big personality. He does really well this year. He revitalizes Matt Stafford's passing game. He gets the offensive coordinator job in 2 or 3 years. If everything's going well, the Rams are a good franchise. McVay retires in 6 years. You know, to keep a head coaching job in the NFL is that long is pretty crazy. But if one guy could do it, it wouldn't surprise me. You know, he retires in 7 years and he keeps Scheelhaase around. You know, why not? I don't see the downside of taking this chance. So in that instance, I'm happy for him. We'll talk about Iowa State and where this changes the direction for them going into 2024. We're going to look at some of the good things. You know, we got to stay a little optimistic, especially when it's only February. I will say my one initial instinct is that I wouldn't be surprised if we have a higher, I would say by the end of the week, but Matt Campbell's a guy that moves fast. I wouldn't be surprised if this even happened tomorrow. That's really why we wanted to get this out to you guys live tonight, because we know with Coach Campbell, things move fast, and I think he knows who he already wants before this ever came public. If you guys really paid attention to this too, this really went under wraps. Like I said in the very beginning, Adam Schefter reported this. For Chris Williams or Connor Ferguson or anybody tied into Cyclone Fanatic not to come out with this first, or even murmurs or whispers of it, it just kind of shows how under the radar this really was. So definitely comes as a bombshell just in the timing aspects of it. So we got to talk about it. Like, what's next for this program? What's next for Iowa State? Who do they go after? I like to be fully disclosed with everybody that tunes into us. I have no inside information. I'm just a fan who gives you guys some thoughts and opinions on things and tries to look into it a little more than the average fan. I think that this will be an in-house hire. I really do. I don't think there is time, first of all, to go out and look for somebody. Iowa State isn't necessarily a dream landing spot for other coaches around the country as well. Now, I know probably working with Matt Campbell now is a lot more appealing than, say, 10 years ago when Paul Rhodes was even around, or in the old Big 12. But I think this will be an in-house hire. If you listen to our stuff last week, Justin and I talked about it. You know, they elevated Jake Waters and they hired Cratch as the linebackers coach, who was an analyst before he left for North Texas as the linebackers coach. Like, Campbell likes to keep his coaches in his own circle. I think that's who he is. I think that's what he likes to develop as a staff. He saw it in Scheelhaase that he was going to be a bright young mind, and he saw, just like he probably saw in Alex Golish a few years ago, that this coach will leave one day just because he's so bright. But I think a lot of the guys he wants to keep around are just guys that they really get along together. I think that's kind of their recruiting pitch, is they keep such a tight-knit staff. It's very small. Most of them stick around for 5-6 years or even longer. And that's another thing that we don't mention either. We got Scheelhaase for 6 years. Now, we're going to go into it on, probably you're going to hear it on radio on why he wasn't hired even before Manning. Like, why did it take so long for him to finally get the upgrade? It is what it is. I think that he helped Iowa State in the long run. And you just got to be kind of thankful for the years that he did give you. Honestly, I thought it was one more year. So really, what's the big scheme of things? I thought this was going to be his last year, if you had to really ask me. So if we're going to make the in-house hire, who do we go after? I think it's two names. I don't think it gets much bigger than that. You look at tight ends coach and Taylor Mauser. He's been an assistant head coach. He got that promotion in 2023. He's kind of Campbell's right-hand man. He's been on Campbell's staff since Toledo, since 2015. He's really familiar with Campbell. I think this is a guy that Campbell trusts, and he served as a quality control analyst in 2020. So he's really familiar with the offense. I think the guys like him. He's one of the guys that have been around in this offense really since the beginning. And you can't say that about a lot of guys. Scheelhaase is now gone. Tom Manning got fired. Alex Golesh has left. Joel Gordon went along with Golesh, and we'll bring up his name in a second. But there's a lot of guys, a lot of changing faces in the offensive room since Campbell's been in town. One guy that hasn't is Mouse. So that's a guy I look after. If you want to look at another guy, wide receivers coach Noah Pauley. This was a guy who just got hired last year as the wide receivers coach who took over Scheelhaase's duties at that position. He was an OC for D2 Minnesota Duluth. He's really new in the program. He came over from North Dakota State. I don't see this being an option, but that's one guy on your staff with at least some sort of offensive coordinator duties. And lastly, what at least I've seen on Twitter and things like that, if somebody does get hired within, you look at a guy like Kyle Kempt. Now, I don't think he will get the offensive coordinator position. That's just full disclosure. But I think that's a guy who in Kempt could get an upgrade. You know, maybe he takes a wide receivers position. Maybe he takes, obviously not the running backs position with Jake Waters now, but maybe he takes over passing game. Maybe he takes over just passing control duties. I'm not really sure. But that's a guy who's been with Campbell for, God, I can't believe almost 4 or 5 years now. I think that's a guy you could groom into being the potential offensive coordinator, maybe in 3 or 4 years down the road, maybe in 2 years. That's my other option. If Campbell decides to go in-house, does he decide he wants to be co-offensive coordinator? Now, he will not come out and publicly probably put that title on his position. But everybody kind of knows that I think it was 2018, 2019 when Manning left for the NFL for the first time. It wasn't publicly said, but it was known that Coach Campbell had a lot to do with the play calls during that year. And I believe it was Brock's freshman year, if I'm thinking correctly. Does that come into effect? Guys, also, Iowa State fans can't really feel sorry for themselves. Alabama's going through the same thing right now. They lost Ryan Grubb, probably the best play caller at the coordinator position in college football. He took another NFL job. So you're seeing this everywhere. What's Alabama going to do? We talked about it. Does DeBoer just take over and take play calling duties? I don't think Campbell will do that, but maybe look for him to make an in-house hire and he kind of takes some of the reins. There's a lot of good things Scheelhaase left from last season. I think this team could use into 2024 even without him. If you had to make one outside hire, no, it would not be Brian Ferentz. Although, yeah, I'm going to leave it as far as that. No, I've seen the speculation on Twitter as well. It will not be Dana Holgerson. That would be a complete downgrade for a guy who's been one of the best offensive masterminds in the last 10 years of college football. The one guy I think you possibly give a call, I look at Alex Golesh and what he's brought from being the offensive coordinator at Tennessee, now moving on to South Florida, being the head coach there, and the success he's had at that program. Who's he brought with him from Iowa State? His offensive coordinator is Joel Gordon. This is the guy I think you give a phone call, maybe at least chat. I don't know how good of a relationship Campbell and Gordon have. Gordon was the passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach just before Golesh had left to go to Tennessee and UCF. I think even Gordon stayed after Golesh left for UCF and then joined him later on. But Golesh sees it in him. I'm sure Campbell sees it in him as well. Golesh is one of the best offensive mastermind. His ranking from where he's ended up just a few years ago at UCF to where he is now at USF. This is a guy who knows how to call plays. So I think Campbell needs to give him a call. I think that's an upgrade. A USF job, the USF offensive coordinator from an Iowa State offensive coordinator. That's the kind of guys you're going to have to go after. One other thing that comes to mind, and I didn't do the research and thinking about, like, is there some other MAC offensive coordinator or MAC coach right now that has ties back to Campbell's days at Toledo. I'm not really sure. I think it's a little late right now, but I'm sure a MAC offensive coordinator would listen to any phone call that Iowa State gives. But I think you got to go after Joel Gordon. He's familiar with the passing game. He worked with Scheelhaase. He worked with that entire offensive room. That's a guy who's familiar. That's a guy you can bring in hopefully before March gets started, and you don't really skip a beat in the middle of spring practice. So that's kind of my initial thoughts on if we're going to be making a hire again. I think this is going to happen really soon. Lastly, just kind of some overall thoughts going forward with or without this hire. How does this change the direction of the offense in 2024? I even had Justin texting me today. We know we talked about it last week. He took the over at, I believe it was 7.5, or he took it at 6.5, and he was really excited about it. And now he's kind of freaking out. Guys, I don't think the sky is falling. The coaching carousel in college football this season has been absolutely insane, something we have not seen before. The fact of the matter is when the NFL calls, you just don't have much to back it up. With that being said, the silver lining of all this, the run game still needs to be a focus, and it needs to improve in 2024. I don't want to sit here and bash that at Scheelhaase and that he didn't get it done, but he was a really good passing play caller. This was known. I mean, you look at the Liberty Bowl when he threw for 500 yards. The run game still has its issues, and I think that needs to be addressed. You still have Ryan Clanton. You made the adjustments in the transfer portal and some of the guys you're bringing in through the recruiting cycle. So I think that still needs to be a huge focus. None of this will matter. Like if Iowa State can't run the football in 2024, you couldn't go out there and get the best offensive coordinator on the market. It will not matter. If the offensive run, nothing else will matter. So I think that needs to be priority number one. Does this change the development of Rocco Beck? It could. It definitely could. I don't think Rocco Beck has a freshman year that he has without Nate. But that being said, guys, the talent's still there. You know, they're bringing back everybody from last year. Yes, did Scheelhaase elevate every single facet of that offense? And do we win 7 games without him? Probably not. But we learned so much from last year and everything that he's brought in and the talent coming back and the new Big 12 without Texas and Oklahoma. There is still a lot of opportunity for Iowa State to really have a good year in 2024. And side note, I think this gives you a bigger reason to go to the spring game. If the new faces weren't enough for you, or just the excitement of the 2024 season wasn't enough, go to the spring game, and see how things are running. And we're going to get a look at it early, whichever direction they decide to go. So that being said, Scheelhaase gave you the blueprint for success for this football team. If the run game doesn't improve, we have to rely on spacing it out, throwing a lot of short passes, and relying on a really good and efficient and secure quarterback in Rocco Beck. But guys, at the end of the day, while this isn't great news in early and later February, Matt Campbell won games before Nate Scheelhaase was the offensive coordinator. And guys, he's going to win games without. Like, Matt Campbell's not going anywhere. The sky is not falling. As long as MC is the head coach for this program, I trust in the decisions he's going to make. Guys, Tom Manning was known as his best friend. And to fire him and to finally move on, Campbell's not afraid to take chances. And I think he's got an eye for offensive talent. You look at all the guys below his staff and where they've gone now. And Scheelhaase is just another great example. Matt Campbell has a good eye for talent, for coaching talent in particular. And I think whoever he decides to go after, I'm going to trust it. And if they decide to keep it in-house, I'm really secure with that. There's too much talent you're bringing back, and that staff is too smart and has proven too many things for me to doubt it at this point. So that's where I leave it. I didn't anticipate giving you guys another podcast a week later after we released episode 2, but here we are. I still love to talk Iowa State football, even though we bring in some kind of sadder breaking news when it comes to this. Enjoy the basketball game tonight. Hopefully Iowa State can get it done. They have one of the biggest games on their season against one of the toughest opponents. So you still have something to look forward to on your Monday night. As always, Justin and I will be back. We will get his full thoughts on all of this in the coaching search as well. Like I said, I bet we have a coaching change here definitely in the next week or two. and we'll have some news for you guys to break down as the offseason continues to grow. And I mean, is it really even an offseason if it's not getting boring at this point, where we have news for you guys every single week? Appreciate you guys tuning in live. As always, hit a like, hit a subscribe, follow us at the Fight Song podcast, where we release live episodes every Tuesday night here on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Thanks again. As always, every single time, you know what it is. Go Cyclones.